in terms of a reasoning process. And then the thing that reinforces that is the myth that, oh, scholars and scientists are just so overwhelmed and perplexed by this. They don't know what to say. They're completely flummoxed by this.
Or,
Well, actually,
even
they're
better,
not.
they have two different models, therefore they don't know what's going on because they
Right.
don't agree.
Right. Yeah, they can't agree. They're just, at each other's throats, and they don't want to entertain this wonderful answer over here. Yeah, it's a lot of misconceptions about what scholars do. It's a lot of wishful thinking about what scholars say or don't say. That's partly, the scholars are partly to blame for that, because a lot of the discussion that happens very specifically to these things, whether it's building or like, hey, there's weird mummies over here with red hair, they must be Nephilim or something like that. I mean, all of this stuff is known, it gets discussed, but it's in what we like to call the fugitive literature. That few people are even aware that there's a journal called X and that people actually write for that, and it gets published and their copies are stored somewhere. I mean, it's been discussed, it's been hammered out. It's not always conclusive, but they're not overwhelmed by the fantastic, compelling nature of this question and the quote unquote evidence that somebody like von Daniken or Sitchen is proposing. That's not the accurate picture at all. But a lot of people never get to that material because they're never directed to that material. And unfortunately, when I do that, I do a lot of that on my blog. Some people will say, "Wow, this is really good. Thank you. I finally know that somebody's thinking about this." Or that scholar will be part of the conspiracy. Mm-hmm. And again, that you can't help those people. There's just really nothing you can do. The best you can do is say, "Hey, what you're saying isn't true. Here's the work that's been done. You need to first demonstrate that this is incoherent, this work that's been done. And once you do that, then I'm willing to listen to some other alternative. You have to refute this really in an exhaustive, coherent way for your wacky view to get a hearing." But they won't do that. And one other broad stroke thing here is that the people tending to do research in this area, I'm willing to say never. Maybe there's been an exception out there somewhere, but I would venture to say never submit their material to peer review.
Why?
Okay, you get a guy like, I think they do it because peer review exposes them in both the sense of, I'm handing my work now over to experts for evaluation. That's part of the exposure. But then when the responses to that work come back and they're not favorable, in fact, they can be quite harsh, then they're exposed for really their shortcomings as researchers and thinkers. So they don't want to take the risk of doing that because they're writing for, I'm not using this word pejoratively, but they're writing for amateurs. They're writing for people who are not specialists in any of these areas. They're interested, though, so they're writing for interested people. And if they don't submit their work to peer review, they can pretty much say whatever they want to say. And who's going to criticize them? Because most scholars don't pay any attention to this anyway.
So you meant that the people not submitting to peer review are the Ancient Aliens people, not the people actually figuring out how to make the pyramid. Okay.
Right. Yeah, it's the Ancient Alien researcher, the one who's trying to promote the idea. They just don't submit their work to peer review, and I get all over people for that, the researchers, and the people who are emailing me or trying to support them. I say, look, this is important. It's important that someone who's really thinks they found something, and you don't have to have degrees. I know lots of people that are retired or they've been a dabbler all their life in something, and they really do know a lot about a given subject, even though they don't have degrees in it. Well, those people, the ones I know, still, when they want to publish something, they will submit it to peer review, or they will send it to experts just to get some feedback. And then they'll be honest, with that, and they'll continue their work. Well, you get people like von Daniken or Jason Martell or whoever it is, they just won't do that because it's a threat to them. And they can always hide behind the idea that, well, my work won't get a positive response because there's just this grand conspiracy to keep this great knowledge from the public. Again, it's a very convenient thing to hide behind. And what I usually tell people that is, look, submit it anyway. Save the responses. Keep submitting it. And once 50 journals have turned this down for non-substantive reasons, then you might have some censorship or some filtering going on. But I don't think that's ever going to happen because journals, you and I know because we read journals, they're not averse at all to publishing competing views, really diametrically opposed views, if the research on either side of those things is coherent and has been done with proper methodology. They're not opposed to that at all.
Especially in letters to the editor.
Oh, yeah. I mean, anything like that. But, again, the average interested amateur, non-specialist, the person who's just watching History Channel and is an intelligent person. I'm not saying doofuses watch the History Channel, even though I think of it as the fantasy channel now. But people are really interested in these questions, these things, and so that they are the audience. And if they're not experts in any of these other areas, the people promoting this stuff, making a living by doing this, they know that they're better off not submitting their work to experts because they can say what they want to people who don't know better.
Yeah.
And that's what they're doing.
Yeah, it's like Hoagland. I mean, actually, he just said, I think the first time that he got on Art's Dark Matter show, now defunct Dark Matter show, he said, Art, this is peer review. This process that we're going through right now that I'm telling you go to this image on your website, that's peer review. And I had a few listeners to my podcast, writing in and being like, I can't believe Hoagland just said that. But that seems like it's what it is. It's like an echo chamber. I mean, that's what the Ancient Aliens on the History Channel seems to be. And along those lines, I was wondering if you have ever gone head-to-head with any of those ancient astronauts, ancient aliens advocates. Like, have you ever debated or directly addressed Jason Martell or even Giorgio Tsoukalos or someone else like that?
No, I was asked, years ago, obviously when Sitchen was still alive, back in 2000, whatever my first appearance was, 2001, I think. It's either 2001 or 2000, I can't remember what it was, but the first time I was on Coast to Coast, Art asked me if I would debate Sitchen on his show, and I said, sure. Afterwards, there were other hosts. I mean, Art didn't say this, but other people heard that when I was on other shows, and they told me off the air that you don't have a prayer of that ever happening, and they were right. I was a little naive. At that point, I thought he would accept, but he never did. I've never debated any of these other figures. There was somebody years ago trying to coordinate a debate that would involve me and Martell and I think some other people, but for some reason it never happened. I'll just give you my honest opinion on, and I know debates, I guess, serve some purpose, some good purpose, but to me debates are for the lazy. And what I mean by that is, if you really want to know what I think and how I would respond to what Jason thinks or Tsoukalos thinks, then what you'll do is you will read the things that I write, where I can lay out step by step, I can show images, I can direct you to primary sources, I can do what I do, and they can do what they do. You will read the discourse, you will invest the time to know. Well, people don't want to do the work. They only want to read, okay? And so what happens is people will call for debates where they can hear essentially sound bites.
Yeah.
And whoever comes off as clever or has a good line, well, that's the winner. Again, debates are for the lazy. Okay, if you really want to know, you will do the research, you will do the work. Again, I guess they serve some good purpose. I'd be hard pressed to articulate what that is. I've been in a few debates on different topics, and very rarely, I don't know that I've even ever heard someone that went into it on one side flip to the other. They're for people who kind of want to. There's no European soccer game going on right now, so let's go to a debate. We just want to hear people fight. We want to fight ourselves, and then we'll go out and go to the pub or whatever, and that's that.